Teida Story is a book about my dog Teida from when she was a pup to her old senior years. And it goes through good times, bad times, happy times and sad times. I had no idea I could write a book. I wasn't even planning to write a book. A dog, Teida, came into my life and I had a phobia of dogs. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, this big dog decides to come up in the middle of the road and just bite me on the leg. So I got on the crate, still in my, I must have been a sight to see. And I jumped the fence into their backyard with these two dogs in their backyard. I thought I'd just write a book to share with others how a dog can connect to somebody. Pets are just as important in a household and as well as people. And if there's no one else around and you need someone to turn to, you can turn to your dog or turn to your pet.
The joy of seeing your words in print, that is the best thing in the world.
Dare to be different is how I say it, because that's what I try to do with mine.
Welcome to Stories and Stanza. I am your host Abhra. I am a poet and I created this podcast to bring you a montage of real stories that make life beautiful as poetry. Some stories are my own and some are from the wonderful people who have chosen to join me as guests and bring their incredible journey. Stories include a creator's passion or unfolding branches of human emotions in the face of failure, or unfamiliar chapters from the past that remind us about the richness and vastness of life. Embark on a voyage of exploration, contemplation, and motivation with me. Please join me in welcoming today's guest speaker.
Hi, Danielle. Good morning and welcome to Stories and Stanza. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Abhra. How are you? Thank you for having me on your Stories and Stanzas podcast series.
I'm good, thanks. And as you can see that the name Stories and Stanza, it's all about writing and creativity in telling stories. And I'm looking forward to our chat today. So for the audience, Danielle, could you tell a little bit about yourself?
So I'm a published author based in Australia, in Sydney, Australia, with the published book Teida Story, Life Through the Eyes of a Dog. Teida Story is a book about my dog Teida from when she was a pup to her old senior years. And it goes through good times, bad times, happy times and sad times. There are moments where you laugh and there are moments where you may cry. And I just thought I'd write a book about Teida, sharing it from her view, not from my view. So it's from a dog's perspective of how she connected to me when she came to me and then right up to her senior years.
I'm looking forward to hearing all about Teida's story and your inspiration in your preparation for the book. But before getting to that, could you share your story about how you came to writing the book and how you came to overcome the fear of dogs that you had and what happened with you? It is very interesting, and I think the audience got to know about that.
Sure, I had no idea I could write a book. I wasn't even planning to write a book. A dog, Teida, came into my life, and I'll share that in a minute. As you said before, I had a phobia of dogs. And that was when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I was crossing the road after getting the Sunday paper with my sister. And this big dog decides to come up in the middle of the road and just bite me on the leg. It was like a white Alsatian German Shepherd dog. And so from that point on, I walked up the street home with my sister. And from that point on, I was fearful of medium to large dogs. And it took me a while. We had dogs growing up when we were young. So medium-sized dogs were okay. But then the larger sized dogs from the Labradors, Golden Retrievers, German Shepherds, and even larger, I still had a fear of those dogs. And it wasn't until many, many, many years later, I moved out of home and I belonged to a service called the SES, or the State Emergency Service. I was a volunteer there. And I stayed overnight, and because we had to get up early the next morning somewhere. So I said, stay overnight. And so I had my room, basically closed the door, the alarms were all turned off. And I heard somebody just open the door, grab something and leave. And I thought, okay, that's fine. didn't worry me. Went to sleep, woke up, went to the bathroom, and I hadn't even got changed out of my nightwear. I was in my white nightie and everything. And I had this big alarm going from outside, and I thought, what the hell is this? I had no idea what this alarm is. I hadn't been here before. I've never stayed overnight in this place before by myself or anything. And so I went to open the back door, and the back door, just this gust of wind came and the back door slammed. So here I am stuck in this back part of the building with the door slammed, and still door. So I couldn't get out. I had to climb the fence to get out, and I was in my white nightwear. The next door neighbour had 2 German Shepherd dogs in their backyard, and they were guard dogs. So anything that came by, they barked at it. And I'm surprised they didn't bark at me walking along the street, walking in the area. And I thought, I've got to get to them. So I actually called, Charlie was his name, and I had to call out to Charlie and say, Charlie, let me use your phone. The only phones there was like a mobile phone or a landline. And I knew someone was home because I could see light in their house. Through the piers of the fence, I could see light in their house. And I thought, I screamed out again and nobody heard me. So I had this crate, there was this big crate near the fence. So I got on the crate, still in my, I must have been a sight to see. And I jumped the fence into their backyard with these 2 dogs in their backyard. And that's how I overcame my fear of dogs, because these dogs didn't bark at me. They stopped and they looked at me. And Charlie came out, let me use his phone, and it ended well in the end. But he must have thought, who's this person in their white nightie jumping a fence, and why are my dogs not barking? Because they bark at everything. And that's how I overcame that fear of dogs.
That's such an adventurous as well as
I
interesting
know, crazy,
story.
isn't it? Then Teida came into my life years later. My house was broken into, and the police said to me, I have to get a dog. It would help with security of my yard and my home to have a dog in the backyard when I was at work. 4 days later, a friend of mine said, I'm giving my dog away. Do you want a dog? And I'm thinking, how can I have a dog? I work long hours. I wouldn't see the dog. It's not fair to the dog to just be in the backyard by itself, where I come home. I leave home early in the morning and I come home late at night. And I turned to my friend, who's George in the book, and I said, look, what do I do? And he said, well, bring the dog over. There's no obligation for you to have the dog. So the dog came over, and this dog was a cross Staffordshire red cattle dog, 6 years old, and she just roamed around the yard as if it was her home. The owner walked away, and that's how Teida came into my life. And we connected like as if she'd been in my house forever. And so I thought I'd just write a book to share with others how a dog can connect to somebody, and maybe it might help somebody else in a small way, that pets are just as important in a household as well as people. And if there's no one else around and you need someone to turn to, you can turn to your dog or turn to your pet. They're non-judgmental. They accept you for who you are. And all they just want to do is just go with the flow and play and just be with you.
That's amazing, and I look forward to uh, hear something from your book. So, and this is something I request my guests, that if they're talking about a book, can they read something from it, so that the audience get a better idea of the book is. So can I request you to read
I can
something?
do that for you, sure. What have you done to your paw, Teida? Are you limping? With Linda, I had so much fun no matter what we did. It was the enjoyment of just being together, whether it was running in the park, playing fetch, or just lazing about. Now I'm going to have fun with my new friend as he holds onto my leash like we're about to have an adventure. Teida, come here. I need to put the leash on you. Once I put the leash on you, Mother and I are taking you for a drive. Well, a drive in your car? Where are we going, George? George attaches the leash to my collar and holds it tight in his hand as we walk outside. You're a strong girl, aren't you? Wait on, George tells me. Down the steps, we turn left, heading towards George's car parked in the driveway. As he opens the back section of the car, without thinking, I jump straight in, saw paw and all. Before I know it, George closes the boot. Mother, George and I will go for a drive. I wonder where Mother and I are going. George's car is much bigger than Linda's. In Linda's car, we used to sit in the front seat next to her, but the back section of George's car is more spacious. I have it all to myself. I can sprawl out without bumping into anything, or I can look up and have a look out the window. I peer outside and watch the many cars whizzing by, faster and faster. In the background, George has the radio on, and music plays from the speakers, some of it fast and some of it slow. I remember some of the music from when I was with Linda. Then George changes his mind and fishes about with his free hand. This is the new Pavarotti CD I was telling you about, George tells Mother as the new song begins. He's a new good opera singer, isn't he? Says Mother. He has a deep voice, George. We turn a corner and come to a sudden stop as George parks the car. George opens the door and I jump out, George holding onto my leash and Mother walking by his side. Unfamiliar odours capture my attention as we enter the building ahead of us. Unknown animals, mainly cats and dogs, surround me from all sides. Now they realise where they're taking me, the vet. Sitting among other people with their sick and injured animals, all I want to do is leave. I am shaking and panting nervously in anticipation of what may happen next. Finally, it's our turn. Teida, would you like to come into the consulting room? A man in a white coat gestures for George to follow him. George, taking hold of my leash, follows him into a small room where there are many different smells of dogs that have come and gone. The man closes the door, looks around and presses my paw. Ah, why did you do that? I yell out in pain. Teida's foot is swollen and infected. That's why she is limping, I hear the man tell Mother and George. Although the thorn is out, Teida needs to take some antibiotics so she can walk properly, the vet says. He gives Mother some tablets for me to take and we go home. Eventually, I'm able to run on all fours again. Pulling up in the driveway, George starts whistling a tune. Springing up like a rabbit, I jump over the back deck into the middle section where the back seats are and finally land in George's lap. Turning off the ignition, he looks straight at me. Teida, what in the hell are you doing here? I guess he didn't know that when people whistle and I'm not tied down, I come straight to them as if they are calling my name. Fortunately, we are safe in Mother's driveway.
That's beautiful, right? And I enjoyed that it's from Tita's narrative. That was interesting. Do you want to say anything about how you came up with the idea and what was your like preparation and maybe research work for this book?
So I had no idea to write a book. I failed English at school. English was my weakest subject. I couldn't write an essay if my life depended on it. My favourite subject was maths. And my teachers told me that I wasn't clever enough to do the subjects I enjoyed. Even though I was a 3-unit maths student, they didn't let me do physics and chemistry. But I loved reading. I could immerse myself in books all the time. In my adult years, after I had Teida, I decided to put pen to paper and just start writing. And I even typed on the computer. I'd scribble notes here and there and everywhere. And there was a course in the local paper called Write Your Book in a Weekend. So I thought, oh, I can do that. I can write my book in a weekend. And I had no idea how to write the book. So I had what I had typed on paper. And I showed the lady who was actually facilitating the class. And she said, no, you have everything all about face all upside down. You need to describe, not tell. And that means instead of saying like the dog had a bone, you actually describe a scene. So you might say on the bright sunny day, there is Teida sitting on the lush green grass eating a bone I had given to her early in the morning. So it allows the reader to use their imagination and describe something. And so I went back and forth to her about 3 or 4 times. And I came to a point where I had no idea what to do. I had this wad of paper, this big manuscript, and I needed someone else to proofread it to see if I was actually capable of writing anything. And a friend of mine said, I'll read it for you. So he actually went through it. I said, look, I need someone to really, really critique this piece of writing. And he did. He went from the beginning to the end, put the red pen through it, And in the end, he said, "This has potential. Keep writing. You are a good writer." And I'm looking at his scripts and he thinks, like my tenses were out. I repeated myself. There was bits where I didn't explain myself fully. And I just thought, well, if he said I'm a good writer, I must be. So I went back to the drawing board and I took in his feedback and I wrote, and then I had a manuscript. And I decided to self-publish this manuscript because that was the thing at the time, was to self-publish, not publish. Going to a traditional publisher took, it was like, winning the lottery. You couldn't, it was virtually impossible. And it took me 8 years to write this manuscript. And then so I self-published it. But then what I found was when you self-publish a book, you actually knock on somebody's door, you go into their bookstore and say, "Look, I have this book." And someone will say, "Look, I want to read it first." And I'll say, "No, you can't read it first. You need to buy it. But I want to read it to see it's good before I buy it." And I thought, well, that's not the objective of anything. And I was working part-time and I just wasn't that salesy type. So I sought further advice and I knew someone who published their book. They gave me the contacts of New Holland Publishers, and New Holland Publishers allowed me to send the manuscript that I had. They looked at it, and they are traditionally a non-fiction publisher. Now, my book, Teida Story, is actually a non-fiction story, but because it's told in the eyes of a dog, it's classified as fiction. And so they didn't know what to do. But then they deliberated and decided they would publish my book, Teida Story. And that's how Teida Story is now on bookstores, bookshelves, and in bookstores all around the world.
That is such a fantastic and inspiring story. I'm sure that the book deserves to be read and spread across the world. I mean, publication across the world in different countries, it has become easier with new technology and stuff. So I am sure that it'll get the love from
Oh,
readers.
thank you so much. I mean, I'd like to say something. It's like,
Yeah, sure.
just give everything a go, no matter what it is. From a child who wants to be an astronaut to an adult who's just wants to write something, and it doesn't have to be a book. It could just be like a book of poems or a book of recipes or something to pass on to their generations. Just follow your heart and do what you feel is right for you, and not let negative people get in the way of what you feel in your heart.
Definitely, definitely. The writing is that inner voice that you want to see
That's
in printed words, and I think that the joy of seeing your words in print, that is uh, the best thing in the world, probably.
Thank you. You're a writer too, I believe.
I am. I have published two poetry books, and I have published them independently because uh, first book I didn't publish when I wrote it. It was sitting there as a manuscript for a couple of years when one of my friends who is a published writer who saw it and encouraged me to publish the book. And when I did that, I got used to uh, how to publish the technicalities of things, and that led me to write the second book. So basically, I have done. I'm not sure if you have heard about Poetry Writing Month. So it is the month of April where you are supposed to write a poem every day. So
Okay.
it's like a bit of a challenge. It's very hard to write a poem for every day because you are not emotionally at the same state on every day of the month. So it's kind of exhausting when you go through the challenge.
Oh,
So,
well done you for doing that. That was good.
so similarly, there is a novel writing month which is in November. So people write a novel across a month and they probably write like 1,000 words every day. But given your day-to-day responsibilities, it might not always be feasible to write the same amount every day. But a lot of people do that. It's a very
A lot of people are hooked on writing
yeah,
words. You know, like I've got to write so many words. I just write, and it might take me 3 hours to get a sentence right. And the reason is because I want it to link to what I've written before. And sometimes if you write things, oh, where am I going to put that sentence? Or maybe I have to rejig this paragraph to put those words, or so you always proofreading and editing, and you're writing as you're reading it. So that's what I find challenging. Rather than just writing so many words, I want to make sure that I'm a perfectionist sometimes. Like I want things right.
that is so true. I mean, both books like that's why I wrote them over a month and then let them sit for a couple of months and fine-tuned the manuscript until I thought I was ready. And
That's great.
yeah, maybe I've started thinking about a third book, but I mean, no rush to write that one. And this
Yeah.
this podcast, Stories and Stanza, this is also part of a writing exercise because it allows me to connect with writers from all over the world, and everyone has a different voice. Everyone
They
one
do.
has a different objective of what they're writing and why they're writing. And I think
Absolutely.
talking to the writers in a way that enriches me because my day job is like it's not intellectually stimulating, let's say. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean I work with in software and finance, which has nothing to do with being creativity and imagination. So in
I used to work in finance, so I understand what you mean.
and it is very encouraging when I speak to a writer and get to know about their writing process. So you told us about your inspiration, how you got started, how you overcome your fear, and do you think that there were some challenges on your way, or were there things that you would have done differently now that this book is out there?
I'll say when I wrote my book, there wasn't the social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram type of thing that there is now. So there's a lot more scope to get your book out there. I learned a lot through bookstores and went to sign my book and do book signings. So COVID also came in right in the middle of it. So I published my book in 2018 and trying to get it out there and trying to get myself out there. COVID came, and so I wasn't able to do authors talks or, publicly do face-to-face book signings, for example. And so that then led to like Zoom, like we are now. However, I didn't have Instagram until later. So I had to develop myself into, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, LinkedIn, YouTube, everything like that. So I guess if I was looking back, try and actually get yourself onto the networks so people know who you are and learn more about. The other thing is when you want to edit a book, because you need to have it edited. So you don't just write a manuscript and think, oh, great, I've done it. He's, hand it to a self-publisher. Have it professionally edited by somebody who's actually in your genre, who understands what your book's about, I say as well, because I did that through doing the course. However, sometimes people just want to look at it once or twice, and sometimes you just need people to bounce ideas off. And if you haven't got that person, that's a challenge. So that's what I find. I wouldn't do everything again. Like I wouldn't sort of think, oh, um, if I, maybe I should do this instead of that. I'm happy with how my writing journey unfolded. I just know that I'd tweak it slightly here and there rather than redo everything.
We got to know about your book. We got to um, read a little bit from the book with you, and we know what the story is about. But if you were to say, like, this is from a dog's narrative, their perspective, what is the message that you would like to give to your readers, which is hidden underneath that story? What is it
Well,
that you
I,
truly want to say to your readers?
I say, remember every moment with your pet, those who have pets. And even if you haven't got a pet, you might see birds outside. You come in face to face with animals somehow, or even just remember those memories, keep those memories and enjoy them. Enjoy that time. And if you want to write about that, you can write little anecdote short stories about them. You can write, even if it's just for your family, they might say, what was a dog like when you were growing up? And it doesn't have to be from your voice. It can be from the dog's voice. Do something different. Dare to be different is how I say it, because that's what I try to do with mine. If I rewrote that book in my perspective, for example, people will think, oh, they might get a different perspective on the story, and maybe think, oh, gee, she shouldn't say that, or she should say, things like that, where when it's from an animal's perspective, there's no bias, there's no judgmental, it's the animal. And it's memories that I want to share with the readers to help them on their life journey. We speak, but there's times where we speak about faith, hope, friendship and love, grief and loss. Teida learns about God. I learn about Teida. And Teida's an epileptic dog. She wasn't just a dog that runs around. She had her own medical ailments. So I had to learn about that. So it's my learning experience about a dog who's epileptic, and it might help someone else out there who's, has a dog with a medical ailment. So that's what I like to try and achieve with my work.
That is beautiful and very inspiring. I remember that I think this is a couple of years ago, like two of my neighbors had dogs. One of them was a sausage dog, and the other one was maybe a Pomeranian. So both of them had very different personalities. One of them was the Pomeranian was more adorable, playful, and the sausage dog was a little bit bitter and aggressive. So whenever I would pass, one would like come close to you and want to be petted, and the other one would bark. It was very interesting. And one day, I saw both of them together, like both neighbors talking to each other. So I bent down to pet the Pomeranian. And then the sausage dog also came to me and wanted
Oh,
to be
wow.
pet. So that's a very fond memory of
Oh, that's
two
lovely.
dogs. So though they have like very different personalities, but
Oh, they
uh,
do. They definitely do.
the way they connect with people was funny and beautiful both at the same time.
Oh,
Uh,
that's wonderful.
and which
That's
is why
wonderful.
it tells me that, writing from their narrative is so much more fun and
Yeah,
can be
it's a
more
lot.
engaging.
It is. It's a lot more lighter.
It
And
is.
the other thing I found with dogs is they actually read off us. And I learned about how to connect with dogs more because they just go with the flow. Like we worry about money, or we worry about our children, or we worry about work, and it's like. And there's a part where I was actually redundant at work, and it's like, what do I do? And she says, like, it doesn't matter, everything will be okay, Mum. And everything turned out fine. So if we learn from our animals and about just to not worry about things too much and just, follow our heart and just trust ourselves and trust the universe and trust God, then things will be fine. You know,
That is
they're
that,
always with us.
that is so true. I think we have come towards the end of our discussion. But is there any testimonial that you received on your book that you'd like to share with the audience?
I've had a few testimonials, but one recently, I had a lady in the local church who bought my book and she just decided to buy it and she hadn't read anything for such a long time. And she was trying to do this project herself through the church. And it actually inspired her um, to do this, to do it basically. And she said, I've never read a book forever. I'm not a reader, but I read your book in 3 days. And now I'm able to do this church project that I just kept putting off and putting off because all it was reading and I didn't want to read. So to know that I helped someone with that, I just found it really inspiring.
Thank you for sharing your book, your story with us today. And is there any future project that you're working on about writing that you'd like to share?
I work on a few projects here and there. I've written a few short pieces, which is on my website and on my social media pages. I am writing a second book, which is in the process of, it's been edited once and I've just got to keep working on it. So it'll be coming out soon.
Wonderful. And I just like to say to our audience that I will link the book in the episode description. So anyone who is watching this interview on YouTube or listening to this on any podcast platform, feel free to take a look from the link and know more about the book and do give it a read. And thank you so much, Danielle, once again for taking the time to talk to Stories and Stanza today.
Thank you so much, Abhra. Thank you so much for the opportunity.